Josh, of severe weather, welcome on this Saturday evening. Appreciate you joining me here, and welcome back to all the new subscribers this season. Well, our first hurricane of the season has found a way to overachieve. Hurricane Erin, which was upgraded yesterday morning, went on a tear overnight and strengthened all the way up to Category 5, a rare event and unusual to see so early this season. We did see it, though, last year with Hurricane Beryl, which moved into the Caribbean at the end of June and became a Category 5. This storm about the same strength now. Fortunately, though, not an immediate threat to any land masses. It is going to find a way to move into the Western Atlantic and curve around such that it doesn't look like it's going to make a direct hit on any major land. But that doesn't mean we won't have impacts. And this video is going to break down what we see going on with Erin, as well as the fact that we've got more storms expected to form in the coming weeks coming off of Africa, and a look at maybe what could be our next system, Fernand, around this time next week. So if you have not become a subscriber yet, I encourage you to do so. That will allow you to see when the latest videos are posted. I'll probably have another one tomorrow morning before church, and then we'll get back to afternoon videos coming early next week. I'm going to share my screen with you here and walk you through what we see right now with Hurricane Erin. Winds are 160 miles per hour. The storm is moving west at 15 miles per hour. It's just now reached the 20 north latitude, which puts it equal with the Yucatan Peninsula, with southern Cuba, and with the middle coast of West Africa. It is moving west, but expected to turn to the west-northwest. We have started to see it slow down some, now moving at 15 miles per hour. A day ago, it was moving closer to 20 miles per hour. And the minimum central pressure, 915 millibars, is quite astounding. Considering this system has had a fight on its hands over the last few days. But at this time yesterday, the minimum pressure was in the 990s. It has dropped almost 80 millibars in 24 hours. It looks like Erin may be starting to level off in intensification, but there'll be a new plane going in here shortly that will give us an idea of what's going on. But a bit of an outer eye wall is forming at this point. Here is the forecast track from the Hurricane Center. They've tightened it up such that it's not expected to make a direct landfall, but we do need to watch it across the Turks and Caicos, across the Bahamas, across Bermuda, and across the eastern coast, especially North Carolina and Virginia, Maryland and Delaware as well here towards the middle of next week. There's still a possibility this could end up getting shifted a little bit to the left. I think it's a little less likely it gets shifted to the right, but we'll have to wait and see. We did notice today the track went a little bit more westerly than maybe what models were expecting it was going to do here. But overall, expected to resume a west-northwesterly track and then begin to bend more poleward, more to the north here early next week. We do have tropical storm watches still in effect for the northern portion of the Lesser Antilles. That will probably get dropped here shortly. Right now, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and the north coast of the Dominican Republic are getting some squally weather, but sustained winds remaining below tropical storm force. We don't have a watch for those. However, I'd mentioned that westward bump today. That has now prompted a tropical storm watch for the Turks and Caicos Islands, which are independent and just south and east of the Bahamas. We are going to see the storm likely staying very powerful over the next several days. There'll be some fluctuations in intensity, but more than likely it will remain at Category 5 here for a while tonight and possibly much of tomorrow, and then probably a Category 4 as it begins to pull northward. But again, it could still be a Category 5 at some point. We've seen storms come back a little bit. So rare air, though, before August 17th, really before August 20th, not very many Category 5 storms. We did have Beryl last year, but then you have to go back to Hurricane Emily in 2005. That was southwest of Jamaica. Hurricane Allen was quite a system that did hit Jamaica hard, then the Yucatan, then eventually near the Texas-Mexico border. I'm not even quite old enough to remember Allen. I'm a little bit younger than Allen. That was an August storm. And then Camille, of course, the benchmark storm for the Central Gulf Coast, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama in 1969. So the fact that it's not yet the beginning of the real meat of the season, which starts August 20th, which is Wednesday, the fact that we have a system like this that nonchalantly headed west-northwestward toward the islands, but managed to curve away and then found a way to go from Cat 1 to Cat 5, basically less than 24 hours, is quite astounding. Here's a look at historically what other storms have gone through this area, and several of them in 2017 and 2010, kind of a clustering of storms. which gets you thinking, of course. Well, we had two of these in 2017 and two in 2010. Could we see two this year? It's definitely possible. The analog year of 2010 and the analog year of 2017 gives us an idea that maybe we've got more potential action in this same portion of the Southwest Atlantic. The fact that the water is very warm certainly is of concern. In fact, Hurricane Earl and Hurricane Igor both took tracks that I think will be fairly close to what we're going to see. Now, those were a little bit later in the year. Earl was at the end of August. Igor was in the middle of September, neither of which really made a significant landfall. They kind of went across the Western Atlantic, curved and maneuvered around land. But Igor did cause major issues, both in Bermuda and especially in Newfoundland and Canada. Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria, on the other hand, were both crushing storms for the Caribbean islands. And Irma continued on through Cuba and southwestern Florida and even up into Georgia, whereas Maria made the bend sooner and found a way to come up to the west of Bermuda, which is sort of what this track is doing. Then 2003 Hurricane Isabel, which was my first hurricane as an official degree meteorologist back in 2003. That system, a little later in the season, came a little bit farther south and moved directly northwest, coming up and hitting the Outer Banks and then into Virginia after that. Here's a look at our next aircraft, which has just left Barbados. It'll be getting into the storm after this video goes live, after 6:30 Eastern time, it looks like. We did have two flights that went through earlier and saw some remarkable stuff. Here's the flight that went in early this morning. When I woke up, the pressure was in the 950s. It dropped to 927 at a rate of 6 to 8 millibars per hour steadily, which is a very incredible rapid rate of intensification, similar to what we saw last year with Hurricane Milton in the southwestern Gulf. And then the flight after it continued to see that intensification, and the pressures when it left were in the high 910s. It's very rare to get a storm below 900 millibars in the Atlantic Basin. We got close to that last year. Actually, we did get right below that with Hurricane Milton. But you got to understand, something like that to happen this early in the season when the pressures surrounding storms are much higher than they are in the Gulf and Caribbean in October is quite a feat. Now, what you'll notice on this particular graphic is that when the plane went through the storm and went across it 4 separate times, each time it found stronger winds, but it also found that the area of stronger winds began to expand. So the storm is not going to stay very small for much longer. It is going to be growing as it gets impacted more by subtropical flow from the south and west. And by the time we get to Wednesday and Thursday, a large portion of the Atlantic will be dealing with some powerful wind. Here's a look at the Western Atlantic. You can see down below here is mighty, small but growing Hurricane Erin pulling away from the islands. The rest of the Western Atlantic, not completely quiet. We do have an area of disturbed weather here, which is moving east, and that's actually going to bring some rain into Bermuda here in the next couple of days. Very unlikely it's going to organize into a tropical system, although I've been surprised. A system like Andrea here back in June managed to get named, even though it really wasn't much to look at. We do have a non-tropical low here over the North Atlantic, and this is basically a front that it's attached to that kind of hangs out like this. And then we see quiet weather across most of the east, but we do have a flare-up of heavier storms over coastal and eastern portions of South Carolina, Georgia, and northern Florida as well. And that is all just coming from some instability and added tropical moisture. So we're going to take a look here at Erin over the next, say, 15 minutes of this video. Here you can see the storm, very powerful, well-defined, but tight eye. It has really got very little wind shear with it, taking up the northeastern Caribbean and adjacent waters of the southwestern Atlantic. We're starting to see rain moving towards the Turks and Caicos and northern Hispaniola. We're dealing with rain across Puerto Rico as well. Behind the storm, things are quieter for a few days, more stable air in place. You can see these lower clouds in here. This is stratus, indicating some drier, cooler, more stable air. So we are going to get a bit of a lull here, but behind this, I do expect to see more waves coming off of Africa that do have the possibility to gradually develop. All right, this is a quick look here at Hurricane Erin, and you can see over the last few frames that the cloud tops on the southwestern wall have cooled. We've gone from white to purple, indicating colder cloud tops of 80 to 90 degrees Celsius below zero. And that is indicating that the storm is maintaining its strength. It is probably not strengthening nearly as quickly, though, due to the fact that there may be an eye wall replacement coming soon. And that is something internal that we really can't predict very well. Only God knows how that's going to play out. But nonetheless, once that replacement is complete, probably sometime tomorrow afternoon or evening, the storm is expected to grow in size. Here's the water vapor, and you can see really a nice moist atmosphere in place across our system. The dry air is no longer an issue for it. Here's the last visible satellite, and you can see, fortunately, winds have remained below tropical storm force over the Virgin Islands and the Northern Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico, as pressures there remain at 1,005, which is probably about as low as they've gotten all season. It's been a relatively benign start to the season up until Hurricane Erin. We do have radar coming out of the Virgin Islands. You can see the center of the storm, well-defined eye wall. There's an outer eye wall trying to take shape here. And when we get what's called a concentric eye wall, where we've got one right here, and it'll come back to me, a second one beginning to form right here. Usually the second one takes over. That will result in a rise in air pressure and probably a decrease in maximum sustained wind. But let's be honest with you. Let's be friends here. I know y'all don't know me. If you are standing on the highway and you get hit by a 160-mile-per-hour vehicle, and then the person next to you gets hit by a 140-mile-per-hour vehicle, there's not that big of a difference. Both are very powerful. Both are going to cause tremendous damage. So the fact of the matter is we're getting the gusty winds and the squalls across the Virgin Islands, some local flooding possible there. Puerto Rico is going to see the same. And regardless, the forecast is for this to remain a powerful Category 5 hurricane through tomorrow evening. Slow weakening expected Monday into Tuesday, but still a very powerful Category 4 hurricane in 72 hours, which would be Tuesday evening. I believe that's right. Sunday, Monday. Yeah, Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock. This has, of course, increased from previous forecasts. Many were keeping it Category 3 yesterday. Eventually, they got up to Category 4. But the fact that it's coming off its peak, even though it's under very warm water, indicates that this is quite a storm. Beyond that, we should see some gradual weakening. I don't know if it's going to weaken quite as fast as what the Hurricane Center indicates. If the system comes a little farther to the west, it spends more time over the Gulf Stream and may have a chance of still being Category 4 in here. It will weaken, though, as it comes up somewhere in this direction here. It is definitely going into cooler water. It's also going to grow in size, though, so that's something to keep in mind as well. The forecast tracks have shifted just a tiny bit to the left of where they have been in previous runs. Still a pretty good amount of agreement, but we have a few degrees of longitude between the westernmost and easternmost solution here when we get to 30 degrees north, meaning the spread is between 70 west and 74 west. Now, the Outer Banks are at 76 west, and by the time we get to that latitude, there's nothing really west of 72. The UK Met's not a great model to use. So it's clearly curving away. Bermuda is at 65 west. Right now, we're very close to that. We're at 64. So it'll be passing due south of Bermuda here later this evening. It is going to make a turn back. And right now, this is somewhat encouraging in that this is what we truly would call a fish storm. But because it's such a big storm, it's really hard to just say it's only the fish that get impacted. There very well could be impacts, certainly on Bermuda, but also on the islands of the northeastern Caribbean, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. And eventually we are going to feel it up here on the East Coast one way or another, whether it's rough surf or strong gusty winds. We're definitely going to be dealing with some of that as well. You can see our track as it goes on in time, still pretty well in agreement here in 2 days. This gets us to a Monday afternoon. Then we start to see a gradual split where some of the ensemble members already start to turn back. Others have continued more to the north and west and are still gaining some longitude. And then the spread grows more substantially when we get here into Wednesday, with the possibilities of something northeast of the Bahamas, southeast of North Carolina, or as far east as near the Bermuda island chain here, or I guess island. And then that spread continues. And really, this is just, is the storm accelerating faster, or is it taking its time making that curve? It's going to make the curve, but you can see how that turn happens. We definitely have a tighter turn radius with the GFS model, that's the green line, than we do with the European and the UK Met, which are the red and blue. And I don't know which of these will be correct. I would forecast between them, and the black line certainly does that. But you can see there's quite a bit of spread once we get past Wednesday, Thursday into Friday, anywhere from still north of Bermuda and southeast of New England to as far northeast as almost Greenland, which is a difference of like 2,000 miles. So there's going to be more spread with time. That is normal. but we just can't completely say that the coast is clear. We can't say Bermuda is going to miss the worst. It does appear that will be the case today from what I'm seeing. But I have been in this business for over 20 years, and I will say things can still change. I don't think anybody here is raising their hand saying this. They thought they were going to wake up to a category 4 becoming a category 5 today. We knew it was going to strengthen. But if I'd come on here yesterday and said, hey, this storm will be a Cat 5 when you wake up, you would have started throwing things at me, or you would have turned me off or called me a hypester. That's in fact what happened. And nothing really can predict something that extreme, just not something that's super probable of happening. And so the computer models that we use just don't do a great job of picking up on that. All right, we'll look at some ensembles real quick. Again, this is a decent amount of spread once we go past day 4 or 5. Really not a chance this is going to hit the U.S. There's always an outlier on either side, and they just awfully rarely ever work out. But if we follow the trend, we do see several models that are within a couple hundred miles of the North Carolina coast. We do need to watch these, but quite a few as well that are much farther east, and also a few that are a couple hundred miles west of Bermuda. So pretty big spread, but you can get the idea of how the system's going to play out and how it's going to turn. And you can see much bigger spread once we get into the second half of next week with a powerful storm that could impact Newfoundland, possibly even Nova Scotia, and then we'll go into colder waters of the North Atlantic. This is the AIFS. Here is the European operational. The spread's a little tighter. Interestingly, the European has 3 ensemble members going up into Atlantic Canada, whereas everything else is way out to sea, and there's nothing in between. It's like Sable Island gets missed. I don't know how that happens. But you can see a very powerful storm for a while here. Here is the NOAA Eagle, and a much tighter because there's only 31 members versus 50. And this is pretty much in line with where the official forecast lands, maybe a little bit to the right of where it is. We do have one ensemble member that does bring us across the Avalon Peninsula of Newfoundland and eventually up toward Greenland. Everything else turns it away. So obviously there's going to be a lot of time there. And then the intensity forecast from our tropical models, which has been so far behind. You can see it's probably almost done strengthening, 160, maybe 170 miles per hour at its max. These 3 models here are pretty much useless when it comes to intensity forecast. Same goes for the blue model. So we're going to see a gradual decline around this time tomorrow. I think we're down to category 4. It may take 3 or 4 days, though, to get down to category 3. And then after that, it is weakening a little bit at a quicker pace as we lose the hot water. But the ship's model says between now and Thursday, it remains category 4 or greater. I've never seen a model do something like that for such a long time. And that could be attributed to the fact that ocean water temperatures are extremely warm. The relative humidity is high and climbing. The heat content is still pretty substantially high for at least the next 4 or 5 days, meaning there's a lot of deep, warm water. And the wind shear remains 25 knots or less. And that's not going to be a lot to really affect the storm core. It may gradually lead to some weakening, but that's going to be beyond 4 days from now as the system begins to recurve. So, wind shear isn't always a bad thing for a large system. Sometimes when it gets farther north and we see this increase in wind shear and an accelerating system, that can often be like a kick in the pants. It actually gives it a boost. So, again, there's going to be quite a bit of challenge to how strong this system is, but it will be a powerful system for several days. The other concern is the growth of the system, how big it gets. You can see the cloud field grows and grows and grows. This is Wednesday. Wednesday night, it is going to be at its nearest approach to Bermuda. Thursday morning, the nearest approach to the Outer Banks. You can see it's kind of equidistant between the two. This is a category 3 or 4 hurricane at this point. Somewhere in that 120, 130 mile per hour range. And then the storm doesn't just shrink. It does get some wind shear, dries out a little bit on the south and west, which is good for New England, but it does continue to grow and accelerate as it makes the bend here. And the GFS paints a very clear picture of how big the system gets over time. It'll be double in size by the time we get to Tuesday morning. And by the time we get to Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night, it'll be about triple the size of what it is now. It's a very powerful storm now, but those hurricane force wind only extend out to about, let me see if I can find the exact number. Yeah, the hurricane force winds only extend about 25 miles from the center, and that's been measured by aircraft. The tropical storm force winds are as much as 140 miles from the center. So Puerto Rico's not under a tropical storm watch because they're beyond that 140 miles from the system. Now, when we flash forward here and we go to the forecast here for the 19th, the hurricane force winds extend 70 miles from the center, so more than triple. And tropical storm force winds extend 180 miles from the center. That's double, but going to 240 and then tripling in size. So a very large system, to say the least. You can see the timing of the winds here and when we're going to see likely the strongest wind. Things will improve on the islands late tonight, tomorrow morning. Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, still windy tomorrow. The Turks and Caicos will be windier tomorrow night and the first portion of Monday. The Bahamas, let me slow down there. The Bahamas will be at their windiest Monday and Monday night. Maybe the northern Bahamas into Tuesday morning. Then winds pick up on Bermuda late Tuesday night. They pick up in the Outer Banks and on the East Coast during the morning Wednesday and into Wednesday night. They'll be at their strongest across the Northeast coast. And then Thursday, those winds pick up across Atlantic Canada. That could change a little bit, but that's the timing we're looking at today. The rain forecast still going to be quite heavy, especially over the northern Virgin Islands, up to 6 inches. Places like Virgin Gorda, St. Croix, St. Thomas, up to 4 inches in the mountains of Puerto Rico. There's more uncertainty as to how much rain is going to fall in the Bahamas. If the system shifts west by 100 miles from where they're forecasting it, we could see these numbers double to even triple. So something to keep in mind there. Here's a look at the wind gust swath. These are the strongest reasonable winds from the European model, gusting to maybe 30 miles per hour in Puerto Rico, 40 to 50 in the Virgin Islands. And 40 to 50, maybe even 60 in the Turks and Caicos. Here's a look a little bit farther to the northwest across the Bahamas island chain, Turks and Caicos. Right now, it looks like the worst stays well offshore, but you see these oranges indicate 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts. If this shifts west by 50 to 100 miles, these numbers could double. So something that we need to just keep in mind for the time being. And then looking at the Northwest Atlantic and the East Coast here, you can see the European does, as it grows the system on the northwest side, it does bring tropical storm force winds onto the Outer Banks. Really tough to see this number here, but about 60 miles per hour at Hatteras, about 35 miles per hour Virginia Beach, 35 miles per hour Atlantic City, 45 Nantucket, Montauk, Block Island, Cape Cod. So we're on the verge of tropical storm conditions, even if the storm goes way out in here, which is what the Euro shows. If the storm comes a little closer and comes up this way, then we can move the red line west and you're going to see wind speeds in the 60 to 70 mile an hour range. So Bermuda right now predicting 50 mile per hour wind gusts. Again, if this shifts back to the right, those numbers can go up to 70 or 80. And that gets us near the hurricane threshold at that point. And then looking at Atlantic Canada, this is where the uncertainty grows. The latest European forecast shows our strongest winds move into Newfoundland, believe it or not, next Saturday morning. So about 6.5 days from today, and as high as 80 to 90 kilometers per hour. But south of us lurk winds that are over 150 kilometers per hour, both of which could cause some power outages and some rough surf. So something to keep in mind. And finally, we're going to look at significant wave height. This is not total wave maximum height, but this is significant wave height. You see right now, wave height 25 feet. That number is going to grow and double all the way up to 50 feet by the time we get to Wednesday morning, halfway between Florida and Bermuda. Even at the coast, wave heights could be up to 20 feet, making for very rough surf and dangerous boating conditions and swimming conditions. And you can see this area just keeps growing and growing, but fortunately is in between all the main land masses at this point. So 48-foot waves, maximum individual wave height, as much as maybe 100 to 105. Pretty substantial here. So that's all I'm going to talk about with Erin. We do want to keep an eye on what's next to come. It's a little early to get specific, but you can see behind Hurricane Erin, we have a break. We have a wave moving off of Africa, which doesn't look like it's going to have much of a future. There's another wave behind it, but the one after it is starting to show some signs of possible organization down the road. Now, this is still 2 days from coming off the African coast. It's over Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and southwestern Chad. Tomorrow, it's going to be over Mali. Actually, this is not Burkina Faso. This one is here. And then it will come off the African coast sometime Monday or Monday night. So right now, forecasts are not super reliable that far out. But what I will say is that for yet another run, we do see the probabilities from the European indicating something will come off the coast. And about 40 or 50% of these ensemble members show development. And by the time we get to Wednesday and Thursday, we see that chance growing to almost 70% of a tropical depression. Interestingly, not a tropical storm, which I don't quite get, but certainly a closed low at that point, potentially. And then over time, the spread increases. We have some possibilities in the Caribbean. We have possibilities in the Southwest Atlantic. The Bahamas and Florida are certainly going to want to watch, but this is still 8 to 9 days away. So really tough to say. But interestingly, after this wave, there's another one to watch and a third one to watch after that. So really hard to say if we're going to have another hurricane until it comes off Africa and we start to see some models. But we do have some things to watch, to say the least. Here is the European ensemble forecast system. This is Erin, obviously. We have very little support for anything before later next week. Then we start to see some ensemble members indicating gradual development by next weekend. You can kind of see there's going to be something out in here. And we have a few members going this way and a few more going this way and just a few going this direction. So if you keep the line going here, the Gulf could be in play. If you keep this line going here, the Southeast could be in play. Keep this line going, and we got a fish storm. Again, way too soon to say at this point, but the conditions should start to get more impressive for this system when it comes into the Western Atlantic, if it in fact does so. And that's going to be 10 days from today. So at this point, I recommend against watching the GFS and the European to see what each run puts out 10 days from now. Just watch the trend and see what they're showing, because they're certainly going to be a signal for another system. It's just really tough to say how that all is going to play out. So that's the European. Here's the AI ensembles, and you can see the ones that really get this developed are following in the footsteps of Erin, but some are also even farther east, curving away from Bermuda. But the ones that don't curve away from Bermuda or hang south of Bermuda, you can see here there's actually going to be an opening maybe for a track in this direction. Again, it's way too soon to say if that in fact will happen. But if you're in Florida, you need to watch that. If you're in the East Coast, you need to watch it. If you're in the Gulf, you need to watch it. And that's about as specific as really I can get at this point. Here's the GFS ensemble and showing more support for something going through the Caribbean and affecting Florida or the Gulf, and less support for a fish storm. Now, it's the outlier because the European and the AI don't show that, but it is something that we're going to have to watch. And we're not going to try to forecast something that, like I said, will be moving through Burkina Faso tomorrow and then coming off the coast of Guinea-Bissau and Senegal on Monday, because you could draw a cone if you wanted to right now, and the cone's going to look like this with a middle track somewhere in here. Again, that would be irresponsible in my opinion. So we're going to watch it here. The European AI shows that we have more of a recurving situation here in about a week. It has a storm approaching Bermuda, but it also has a big blocking high coming into the eastern United States, which could make things interesting. If that high sets up, this may not have the escape route that Erin has this week. And you can see more waves coming behind it need to be watched. Here's the European operational. And here's the next system beginning to get going here near the islands next Thursday night or Friday. After that, it struggles, but likely gets picked up by a front. But again, that's not for certain at this point. The GFS says what front, which is not what you want to hear if you're in the Southeast. It keeps the low moving through the Caribbean. And of course, it's off to the races because the GFS does that with pretty much anything this time of the year. So don't get worried just yet about a storm that's 10 days away, or I guess 8 days away. Next Saturday, it's something we're going to watch, of course, but this takes it across Florida and into the Gulf. But this model has been all over the place. The run before was in the Western Gulf. The run before that was, again, Eastern Gulf. The run before that, a little bit quicker, but coming through Florida and hitting Georgia, which is an awfully rare track. Run before that back in the Gulf. So again, I'm not doing this for awareness. I'm just showing you that this model is horribly inconsistent. But the fact that it is showing something like it did with Erin so far out does mean we need to at least keep an eye on things. And it's just way too soon to say it's not going to be an issue, because it very well could be an issue. We're getting to that time of the year. So we're going to wrap things up here, but I appreciate everybody's time this evening. Thanks for sticking with me twice today. I do want to leave you with a quick word of encouragement. I am a Christian man, and first and foremost, a father second, and then an employee and a meteorologist beyond that. And those of us who do follow Jesus understand this. Those who don't maybe don't understand this. But interestingly, in the Old Testament, the prophet Isaiah said uh, that there would be a son of man. And he said that he is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Pretty crazy that a prophet like Isaiah would talk about something that hasn't yet happened and already say that the world's going to hate him. People are going to ignore him. They're going to scoff at him. That is the life of a Christian follower in many cultures. That those who follow this invisible person up in the sky, blah, blah, blah. It's just, that's just poppycock is what a lot of people say. That's what I said before I became a Christian. What I came to realize, though, was that because God sacrificed this human being on the cross and brought him back so that we could live eternally if we chose to follow him and allow him to forgive us of our sins, gives us the opportunity to have a clean slate and some hope. Faith is putting belief in something that hasn't happened in our lives in front of us. Looking at forecasts is faith. I have faith that this system will not hit the East Coast. Going to your job is faith. I have faith that I'm going to do a good job and they will pay me on time. Faith is that my wife and my kids and my husband and my kids will love me to the end of time. We go through life out in faith every day. It's not that far-fetched to believe that there is some higher power that gives us very little control, but a lot of mercy and a lot of grace. And that is the good Lord. That's what he does. So I'm going to leave you there this evening. I will be back here tomorrow, and I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. God bless you.